And now, letters home from the war for Spider-Man. Dear Sony, this war between you and Disney has gone on too long. I dream of a world where young Peter Parker can finally return home. The poor boy has been lost in this war for so long, I fear I may not even recognize him anymore. Do we even remember what started this silly feud? Oh, right, money. Well, be that as it may, aren't there some things more important than money? Like love and friendship and capturing that thing that made a character special and passing that on to the next generation? I beg of you, if you truly care about this character, then bring him home and end this war. P.S. If you do that, I'm sure Marvel will help you with that whole Venom movie you want to make.
All take place in the world that we are now creating for Peter Parker. I mean, there'll be adjuncts to it. They may be different locations, but it will still all be in the same world, and they will be connected to each other as well.
So there is a chance that Tom Holland as Spider-Man will pop up somewhere?
There's a chance.
There's always a chance.
Dear Kevin Feige, thanks for taking one for the team.
Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgi, and welcome to another episode of Thorgi Reviews, the review show where I tackle everything from the world of geekery. That's about enough for the formalities. Let's get into this. If you are a longtime fan of this channel, you know what's up. You know that Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time. I am somewhat protective of that character, and as a die-hard Spidey fan who has been reading him throughout my entire comic book reading life, yeah, his filmography has been kind of a bumpy ride. It's been full of lows, highs, and lows that we wanted to pretend were highs because we just didn't know any better at the time. I'm gonna get a lot of negative feedback on that last one.
But even when the movies were at their best, they never really felt like a great Spider-Man film. They felt like they were as good as we could get. But now, after all this time, Spider-Man is finally back home. He's finally returned to Marvel, and I'll just say, as a Spider-Man fan, they got it. They nailed this. But even beyond just capturing the spirit of Spider-Man, it's also a darn good movie all on its own. So the story of this film is that after Civil War, when Peter traveled across the world and received a state-of-the-art suit from Tony Stark, he's now on a high. He thinks Tony is ready to make him an Avenger, but nope, Tony just dropped him off back in Queens, and now months later, Peter is having to learn to keep his feet on the ground, to just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But he doesn't want that. He wants the big time, and because of that, he's going to have to learn to be humbled. He's going to have to learn where his spot in life is. And honestly, I love that. Because I hear a lot of people saying that they're getting tired of the Marvel films, and I think that what they mostly mean by that is that they're sick of a hero always having to save the world. And honestly, I agree. I'm sick of every Marvel film being everything is about to be destroyed. I want more Marvel films to just be about a hero taking care of their neighborhood, or them just trying to save what they can with what little powers they have. And this film is all about that. It's kind of shocking that between this and Civil War, it feels like Marvel has not only realized some of their problems, they've decided to make whole films that are commenting on that. And speaking of commenting on problems of previous films, this film is a huge answer to the problems of the previous Spider-Man movies. Listen, as a Spider-Man fan, I fully realize that death and loss is a huge part of Peter Parker's life. Him being down on his luck and beaten down by life is a huge part of his character. But it isn't the only part of his character. Yes, Spider-Man has known loss, he's known defeat, but he's also known fun. He's had friends, he's had crazy and wild adventures, and that's what this movie decides to focus on. This is the first Spider-Man movie that actually focuses on the adventure that is being Spider-Man. It's the first one that's actually funny. It's the first one where Peter doesn't spend the entire film crying about all the people he's lost and instead actually goes out there and tries to be Spider-Man. And that's the next thing I have to compliment this film on. Yes, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield did a fine job as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but Tom Holland puts both of them to shame. Tom Holland perfectly captures not only both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but also all the sides of Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Going back to what I said earlier, the previous Spider-Man films always gave us that Spider-Man who was being beaten down by life. It was the Spider-Man dealing with tragedy. It was the Spider-Man dealing with loss. This Spider-Man is the Spider-Man who knows how to actually have fun, who actually has hopes, he actually has goals. And don't get me wrong, he's still an awkward loser, but he's an awkward loser with friends and people that he can joke around with. In fact, speaking of the whole awkward loser thing, we got that in the previous films. And we also got the Spider-Man who was cool. But we always got either the awkward loser or the cool Spider-Man. Tom Holland is the one Spider-Man actor who's actually been able to portray that Spider-Man is the awkward loser who is really trying to be cool. This is the only time in which I have ever seen a Spider-Man film where when Spider-Man runs in to save the day, he does not look like a seasoned pro going in there to strike an action pose. He looks like the scared young kid who doesn't know what he's doing and is just trying his best, which is what Spider-Man should be at this point in his life. In fact, speaking of the fact that Tom Holland portrays him as the scared, awkward kid, he actually gets that Spider-Man is a kid.
Yeah, this is a compliment I have to give this film, not as far as the other Spider-Man films go, not as far as other superhero films go. This is a compliment comparing it to just other films in general. This is the best version of a high school I've ever seen in a movie. Ever. Everyone in here actually looks like they belong in high school, and they actually look like they'd go to a high school in Queens, New York. It's not just a bunch of 20-year-old J. Crew models walking around trying to convince you that they're really 15. I'm looking at you, upcoming Jumanji movie. You know damn well that doesn't look like a teenager. And his supporting cast at this school is excellent. Ned, Liz, Flash, all of them are well written and full of personality that makes them memorable. Especially Zendaya as Michelle. She's hilarious and very unique, and I hope that we see more of her in the next film.
Spoiler alert, you're totally going to see more of her in the next film. You'll get what I mean when you see it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
And of course, I have yet to talk about the villain of the movie, Tony Stark. Okay, I'm just kidding, but I do love that this film makes no bones about it. Yeah, Tony Stark is kind of an a-hole. He is not the guy that Spider-Man should be looking up to, but because Peter Parker is 15 years old and he wants a chance to shine and he wants to impress the big famous science guy, and because he's just looking for a father figure at this moment in his life for some reason that thankfully they don't feel the need to go into, he just really wants his Avengers senpai to notice him, and we see how that wrecks him. How it's not healthy for him to look up to this guy, but Tony does actually step up and reveal he does care about the kid, just in his own screwed up Tony Stark way. But if you're worried that he's going to be in this film too much because Marvel really wants you to know he's in this movie, don't be. We've seen 50% of his time in this movie in the trailers already. In a 2-hour-long film, he's in here for maybe 10 minutes tops, which feels like just enough time for him to do what he needs to do and get out. And what is that thing that Tony needs to do in this film? It's to teach Peter the lesson. Hey, you don't have to be an A-class hero. You can be a street-level hero. You can be that guy who stops muggers because while the Avengers are off saving the world, someone has to look out for the little guy, and that's your job. And you know what? That's totally okay. This film really is about Peter Parker learning who he needs to be, and they found a brilliant way of doing that without having to do the whole Uncle Ben dies and power and responsibility thing all over again. And because of that, this film isn't just a Spider-Man movie, it's the movie that kind of explains the point of Spider-Man. But on to the actual villain, the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton. Now, I'll admit, there isn't really anything new to this villain. He's a person who got screwed over, and he has reasons for committing crimes that we can understand, and we've seen this a lot before, but the way he actually runs his operation, like it's a business and all the people working under him aren't his henchmen, they're his employees, like it's a construction crew, which is what he started off working in, that's actually pretty new. And Keaton does a great job. He's actually really intimidating, and he's even one of the only villains in cinematic history to ever make the "we're not so different, you and I" speech, where he actually kind of has a point and actually does help the character with his growth.
And I feel like that's a microcosm of this entire film. Nothing in here is really all that original. If I have one big critique of the film, it's that. However, even though it's not that original, everything that's in here is tweaked just enough to make it feel refreshing and new, or it's at least done incredibly well to make you appreciate it all over again. Like all of the superhero action, it's just superhero action. We've seen this stuff before, however, we haven't seen it in a while. There's nobody flying up in the air to stop a giant beam of light shooting into the sky to save the entire world. It's just a superhero being a superhero, and it's been a while since we just got that, so it does kind of feel refreshing and new. And even if it is that same old superhero stuff, everybody in here is so likable that, yeah, you're going to go along with it anyways. And all the stuff outside of the superhero action, it's just a typical high school comedy, nothing really new there. However, it's a darn good high school comedy. You would want to watch the high school stuff in here, even if there was no Spider-Man movie involved. Even if this was just a high school comedy, you would totally buy a ticket for it. So as I said, that's really my only critique with the film, but are there any actual negatives to this movie? Well, in all honesty, I do have some nitpicks with it, but that's pretty much just what they are. Just nitpicks that don't in any way really affect the overall performance of the entire film. In fact, most of them are either spoiler things that I can't really bring up here, or they're things that I really only have a nitpick with them because I'm a huge die-hard Spider-Man fan, and I honestly don't think that the average audience out there will care one way or another about it. So it's not really worth mentioning in this video. However, if you do want to know all my little tiny nitpicks in there, we did do a spoiler talk as soon as we saw the film. So if you want to check that out, there will be a link to it at the end of this video.
So to sum up, this is the 6th Spider-Man movie we've gotten and the 3rd to start a new franchise for him. And yet it still made me want to go back and see it again. As a longtime fan of Spider-Man, it gave me the movie I had always been asking for. And even for non-Spider-Man fans, it's just a darn entertaining film that fixes and addresses many of the problems you might have had from previous superhero movies. So I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. The only reason I'm not going higher is because while everything in this film is good, there's nothing really mind-blowing in it. I enjoyed pretty much every single minute of this film, but I never really felt like throwing my hands up in the air and screaming in joy. The best way I can sum this up is that this is a student who got every question on the test right, but they didn't do the extra credit question. But still, this is easily the best Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten. It's the one that showed that there's more than just one side to his character. It's the one that actually made him fun, and it's the one that provided a whole new life for his character and got people ready for more. As I said, this is the start of his 3rd franchise, and yet I'm excited to see where it goes. I actually want more Spider-Man films all over again.
So let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this film. And remember, if you've already seen the film, then make sure to click on our spoiler talk that will be coming up at the end of this video. And also, if you've already seen the film, next weekend, we're actually going to be doing a Q&A in which you guys are going to be submitting your questions and comments that you have about this film. And we're going to be reading them on a new video. So if you want to be able to submit your questions, then make sure that you click that subscribe button. Also, if you guys want more from me, then make sure that you subscribe to me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr, all at Professor Thorgi. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.